Hello guys, my name is Remik, and in today's video we are going to cover the topic of how to use properly Docker and Docker Compose file in order to create the containers for the React application, .NET 8 Web API, and also MSSQL database. We'll establish the proper networking between all of those containers, and also we'll set up the HTTPS and proper certificate that will be created for us in order to have the HTTPS inside of the one of our Docker containers that will be responsible for our .NET 8 Web API. So if you're new to this channel, then please hit the subscribe button down below, write a comment, give me a like, and now we are going straight into the topic. Before starting to work with Docker, you have to make sure that you have the Docker desktop installed in your local machine. So I just recommend to go to docker.com and based on your operating system, just to download the Docker desktop. And then you will have this view that you have Docker desktop installed, and then you're ready to execute all of those commands that we'll write in just a moment. Alright guys, so now the very quick recap where we are actually at. We have the .NET 8 Web API that is connecting to the Microsoft SQL Server through Entity Framework Core. It's retrieving the connection string from the app settings JSON file, and then it's connecting to the database, and it accepts the incoming request from the following origin. So it's this localhost 5000, and it's our React application. So now we would like just to create the simple Docker file with the HTTPS support for our .NET 8 Web API. Then we'll create the container for the Microsoft SQL Server, and then we'll also connect the React application that will be hosted in the separate container, and this container then will talk to our API, and our API will talk to this MSSQL database. So the first thing to do is just to create the simple Docker file. So I'll create a file that will be called Dockerfile. In this Docker file, the first thing we have to write what is the base image from the Docker Hub that we would like just to use in order to run our .NET 8 Web API. So we have to write from mcr.microsoft.com with a /.NET ASP.NET 8.0 as base. And actually this line specifies the base image to use for the Docker build process. In this case, it's the ASP.NET runtime image based on the .NET 8 from the Microsoft Container Registry. It's using an existing ASP.NET runtime image as the base, and then it provides the environment that will allow us to run our application in the container. Now we have to assign the working directory for this, so it will be workdir, and it will be called app. We would like to expose two ports. It will expose one HTTP port and also HTTPS. So we have to write expose, and then it will be 3000 for HTTP and expose 3001 for the HTTPS. So those lines are responsible for exporting the ports from the container to the outside world. So they specify that the application inside the container will be listening for the incoming connections on these ports. So it's necessary just to establish the proper communication between the containerized application and also other containers that will be needed. Now we have to create the build instruction for our application. So it will be the from mcr.microsoft as well .com/.NET, then SDK, because we will use .NET SDK for the building process, and we'll assign the alias as build with the argument that will be the development build configuration. So build configuration, and it will be development. And then for this section, we would like to assign the working directory as the src, so the source. Now there's the time to copy the CSproj files that are in the movies presentation, infrastructure, domain, contracts, and applications, so all the layers, because we would like to restore with the usage of the .NET Restore our app, and then just to build it and publish as an artifact. So we have to copy all of those. So as you see, I have 5 of those CSproj files. So I will just copy from our local machine directory from the movies presentation CSproj to this src/movies.presentation. So I will just use this command. Same for all of those, but I will change this accordingly. So it was, first one was infrastructure. This infrastructure we copied as well. Then it was domain. Then it was application, and also the contracts. So I will write contracts from movies contracts to the movies contracts. Now we have to restore all the dependencies, so we'll run a command that will be called .NET Restore, and we have to restore this CSproj, so the movies presentation. And then after restoring all the dependencies, we have to write copy dot space and the dot. And this line copies all the entire contents of the local directory into the src directory in the container. So this includes actually all the source code files, configuration files, any other files necessary to build and run the application. So by copying everything at this point, Docker ensures that any changes made to the source code will trigger a rebuild of the application, including the reinstallation of the dependencies if it will be actually necessary. So after doing all of this, we have to type work dir src movies.presentation, and then in this working directory we would like to build our app. So we'll type .NET build and then movies.presentation CSproj with the argument that will be the build configuration that we have just set, that is development, and with the output directory as app build. And then we have to publish the artifact for our app. So we'll use the build, so from build, and it will be called now as publish. With the argument, it will be the build configuration. Build configuration equals to development. Then we have to run .NET publish, and we have to publish that what was built. So that one with the C build configuration, the same as before, build configuration. Then with the output of the app/publish, And we have to specify the flag not to create the self-contained application. So we'll write use app host, and it will be equal to false. All right, and now we have to type from base as final. So then we are using the this base image that we have downloaded from base as final. We have to assign the working directory to the app, and now we have to type the line that will copy the publish artifacts from the publish stage. So from this stage to the current stage working directory, so to the app. So then it brings the publish application from the previous stage, and then it could be run by the base image. So we have to copy from publish app publish and the dot. And the last thing will be the entry point. So we have to specify the command that will be executed when the container is started from the final image. So it sets the entry point to start the .NET Core application using .NET with the movies.presentation DLL as an entry point assembly. So we will use entry point, and here we'll just write .NET, and then it will be the movies.presentation.dll. Alright guys, so now I would like to create a separate Dockerfile for my React application in order to create an image and then the container, and this container will talk to our .NET 8 Web API. But I would like to set not the default port as it is for now in Vite, so it's 5173. I would like to set this to 5000. So my React app port will be 5000, so I have to specify the server, and then in here the port, and it will be equal to 5000. The one very important thing is to set the incoming IP addresses rule just to accept all the IP addresses in the package JSON. So in those scripts and def, we have to write host and then 0000. Now I will go to my movies folder and I will create file that will be the Dockerfile. And in this React application Dockerfile, we have to set also some of the commands, but they will be more simple than what we had in our .NET 8 Web API Dockerfile. So we will start with the base image from Node.js. So we have to type from Node alpin as the build, then working directory will set as app. Then we have to copy the package.json and also package-log.json file to the existing directory. So it will be package.json, but with the star, just to take both of them. Then we have to run npm install based on this package.json file to restore everything. Then we have to copy everything from the local directory to this app directory, and then we'll expose the port 5000 that we have set in our Vite configuration, and then the command will be npm run dev, so npm run and also dev. Now we'll create the Docker compose file that will contain all the instructions related with the creation of the containers based on the Docker files. So I will just add this Docker compose file, and we'll not use this default one. We'll just create everything by our own. So we'll change this movies.presentations to the movies.api, and the image will be movies.api. Now we'll add also the container name. So in here, I will type container name, and it will be called movies.api. The build context will be something else than this Dockerfile, so it will be the context of dot, so the current directory, and then from the current directory we'll check for the Dockerfile, and this Dockerfile is actually in the movies.presentation for our API, so it will have this path. Now we have to set also the environment variables to our API, so I will type environment, and in here we have to type ASP.NET Core _ environment. It will be equal to development, then ASP.NET Core HTTP ports. It will be the 3000 as we have in our Dockerfile, then ASP.NET Core HTTPS ports, it will be 3001. Now in this field we have everything. I will go to our ports, and we have to specify like the same here, so we'll have 3000 to 3000, and then 3001 port will be the same as in our Docker container 3001, so it will be mapped to be the same. Then we have to type volumes, and in here we have just to go to the ASP.NET folder, HTTPS, and HTTPS, the column of row, because we would like just to get the certificate in order to have the HTTPS port up and running properly in our Docker container. As you see here in those volumes, we are actually pointing to this current user ASP.NET HTTPS directory that we would like just to have the certificate for the HTTPS that can be exposed from our Docker container. So in your user, then .ASP.NET and HTTPS, we have nothing here. So we would like to create the certificate, so we can use the following command in the command line. So we'll type .NET dev certs, then HTTPS with the flag EP, and then inside of it I will just point to my directory. So it will be users, then my username, then will be .ASP.NET, then HTTPS, and then movies.pfx, and the password for it will be, for now, not very safe, 123. It was generated successfully, and as you see, I have the certificate with the extension of the pfx. We have to also write down the .NET dev certs HTTPS, and to trust the certificate that we have created. We successfully trusted the certificate, and now we are ready to proceed further. Now we can use also two environment variables that will be called ASP.NET Core _ Kestrel _ certificates _ default underscore underscore password, and it will be 123, and then ASP.NET Core underscore Kestrel underscore underscore certificates default underscore underscore path, and it will be https and then movies.pfx. For now we have everything, but later on we'll also assign the depends on the database server. So we can do this actually now. So I will create another service that will be called database server. And this database server will have the image of the mcr.microsoft.com / of MSSQL database and then server. The container name will be called database server, and then we'll have the ports, and those ports will be the default ones. So we have to map 1433, the default SQL Server port, to 1433 in the container. We'll write as well the environment variables to accept end user license agreement and also the password. So environment accept EULA, it will be yes, and then the password, and it will be super password 123. And then we have to also have the volumes for our database not to lose any data in case of switching the container off, let's say. So we'll assign the volumes, and those volumes will be as it is, SQL Server data var opt MSSQL data, and I'll have same for the logs. So MSSQL, here I'll have log, and we can also create the health check for our database, because the point is that when we will run our .NET application, then it will try to connect to our database. And MSSQL database, as far as I have seen, it's starting not so fast, and it's not exposing the all related ports to be able to be connected, because it's all the time starting up, and our .NET application will not successfully be started, and then we'll have the failure. So we have to create some kind of the health check to check if our database will accept the request to the database. If not, then we'll wait some kind of the interval. So I will just write the following command. So it will be the test opt MSSQL tools bin SQL command. It will be local host with the user of SA, so the default one, and with the password the same that we have set here. And then we'll just have the select query, select one -b -o def null, it will be the interval of 10 seconds. Then the timeout will be 3 seconds. Retries, I can just set 10, and the start period will be 10 seconds. And now we can just go to our movies.api, and under the volumes we'll have the depends on database server, and the condition is that service is healthy. So it will not start until we'll not have the successful response from our database server. Now I would like to create also the container for our React app. So I will just type movies.client, and in here it will be the build, and the context will be movies.presentation, then the client, then movies, and the Docker file will be the Docker file that is inside of it. Image will be movies client. Container name will be movies.client. And also we have to specify the ports. So the ports, it will be mapped from 5000 to the 5000, and it depends on the movies.api. It depends on the movies.api without the colon, without the... Now we have to go to our movies.presentation and to the app settings JSON, because we haven't set up the DB connection string yet. So we have to type the server, and server will be equal to database.server with the port of 1433 after the colon. Then database will be movies DB, then user ID. User ID is SA. Password to our database was, I don't remember now. It was this one. So the password was this. And we have to trust server certificate. It will set this to true. In the program CS, we are in the if statement. If it will be development, then we are creating the service scope. Then we are using DB context from the service scope. Service provider gets service movies DB context, so my DB context from Entity Framework core, and then we are migrating this DB. So if it will be blank, then it will create for us everything that we have set in our DB context. For now, it will be only one table. And now, once we have everything done related to the Docker Compose file and also to the Docker files that are creating the images for us, we can write down the Docker Compose app that will create for us 3 containers, the one for the API, one for the client, and one for the database. So I will write down Docker Compose app, and we have to wait a bit because it will download all the related images and then it will build for us the containers. If we will not wait for it, then we'll have some kind of an error that will tell us that unfortunately it was not able to establish the handshake between the API and also the database server. Now, as you see, our movies API has been started, so that means that our database is healthy, and then it was able to establish the communication between the API and the database. And also here, as you see, the client is up and running, so our React app. So I can just open this up. As you see, the React app has been loaded properly with the usage of the Docker container. As an example, we can create one resource and then check in the API if it's actually in the database itself or not. So I'll create movie category 1. I'll click submit, and the ID is 8 because I was playing just right now with those containers, and we see that it has been saved. I'll just edit this title, and here we have also the reflection for that, and we can go to the Swagger, and in here we can just check if that movie is actually in the database or not. So I'll just assign the page size to 5 and page number to 1. And in here we see that we have 200, and also that the movie in here has been saved in the database. Alright, so that's everything for today's video. I hope that it was helpful for you. If yes, then please hit the subscribe button down below, give me the like, write the comment, and see you in the next one.